In the shadow she lurks, a digital sage. Her words cut through like a sharpened blade. Political cow, her voice brings rage. A rebel in the neon-born parade. With a keyboard she wields her might, piercing lies with truth's own light. Drifting through the endless night, exposing wrongs to make them right. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows. Through every corner, every show, a beacon where the lost crowds glow. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows. Through every corner, every show, a beacon where the lost crowds go. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word.
All right, what's going on, everybody? Do I have my music going? I can't hear music. Oh, yeah, it's going. Okay, cool. Well, it just, the plot thickens even further. Gotten some good feedback on the thumbnails with Zelensky in chains, so I thought I'd throw Starmer in there with him in chains. You may have seen some headlines today that, I don't know if I have the photo available, but the UK and France take the lead, or Europe takes the lead in peace talks, is the headline. And the subtext then says Europe to send troops and planes to Ukraine. And so I'm scratching my head. How does that translate to peace talks exactly? What is that? So many times, if you were with us in the past few days watching the debacle that was Zelensky's White House meeting. It wasn't really the meeting. This was supposed to be the the press briefing to talk about the deal and the terms of it and how everything's in alignment. But Zelensky just he kind of messed that whole thing up. But so many times he talked about what assurances do I have, what guarantees do I have of security, and he was effectively asking for more arms, for a greater, higher levels of military contributions to be made to him, and that was his way of making guarantees happen. I don't know how you see that in terms of de-escalation. And then on multiple occasions, he was very negative and spoke terribly about Putin. Not suggesting anything one way or another about Putin, but if you're going to make a deal with someone, you can't call them a killer. You can't say these things about them and expect for them to come to the table and sign a deal with you. Anyway, plot thickens, though, right? Just recently, in the past hour or so here, I saw some news reports hitting the wires that we are pausing military aid going to the Ukraine. How long that'll last, I don't know yet. But that's a pretty massive step forward, because if we are paying 3 times the amount of what Europe is contributing, there's no way they're going to be able to keep up. So if they think they had a bold idea to kind of push us into continuing to fund the conflict, that's not what Trump's after. He wants the conflict to end. He wants there to be peace. He wants there to actually be some diplomacy going forward. So that should short circuit any attempts by our good buddy here, Starmer, to continue what is. I mean, you expect a different outcome and continue the same process and the same actions. That's just not happening. I mean, that's Einstein's definition of insanity. Just to keep doing the same thing, expect a different outcome, right? So let me bring up. Hey. Share. There we go. Of course, now I disappear. Okay, I'm back. So let's check out a couple things. Starmer is really pushing hard on the case for
We now come to the statement on Ukraine. I call the Prime Minister.
He's pushing really hard for the case of continuing the same.
Less than a week since I called on this House to show the courage of our predecessors, we see clearly before us the test of our times, a crossroads in our history. So with permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll update the House on my efforts to secure a strong, just and lasting peace following Russia's vile invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, it begins in this House, where on Tuesday I announced the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. A recognition of the fact that once again we live in an era where peace in Europe depends upon strength and deterrence, but also a rediscovery of the old post-war argument, long held on these benches, that economic security is national security. Because, Mr. Speaker, the demands we now have to make of Britain must come alongside a new foundation of security for working people. The tough choices that we made last week, they are not done. We must use the process of getting to 3% of our national income spent on defence to fundamentally rebuild British industry. Use our investment in military spending to create new jobs and apprenticeships in every part of the country. And that's why last night I announced a deal that perfectly symbolises the new era. A partnership with Ukraine that allows them to use £1.6 billion of UK export finance to buy 5,000 air defence missiles manufactured in Belfast. Mr. Speaker, that means UK jobs, UK skills, UK finance pulling together for our national interests, putting Ukraine in the strongest possible position.
At some point, this has to get a little sick almost. We're going to give you money so you could spend it on our weapons factories. Where does that money come from? In the case of the British pound, they're just printing it, most likely here. I doubt they're going to increase taxes on their population.
For peace and protecting innocent civilians from the terror of Russian drones. Mr. Speaker, my efforts continued on Thursday when I met President Trump in the White House to strengthen our relationship with America. Now, what happened in his subsequent meeting with President Zelensky is something nobody in this House wants to see. But I do want to be crystal clear. We must strengthen our relationship with America. For our security, for our technology, for our trade and investment. They are and always will be indispensable. And we will never choose between either side of the Atlantic. In fact, Mr. Speaker, if anything, the past week has shown that that idea is totally unserious. Because while some people may enjoy the simplicity of taking a side, this week has shown with total clarity that the US is vital in securing the peace we all want to see in Ukraine. So I welcome the opportunity for a new economic deal with the US, confirmed by the President last week, because it's an opportunity I'm determined to pursue. I welcome the positive discussions we had on European security, including his clear support for Article 5 of NATO. I welcome the understanding from our dialogue that our two nations will work together on security arrangements for a lasting peace in Ukraine. I also welcome the President's continued commitment to that peace.
All right, so observation here. You notice how conciliatory and how much of a, acknowledgement this is for the United States, his commentary here. He's not calling us out. He's saying that he needs the United States. We need the United States, speaking on behalf of Europe, and how much outreach is underway to make that happen. But you watch what CNN says about this, and I could bring it up here in a little bit. Watch what CNN says about it. It's a completely different story. They've spun it to something that it's not. From his statement so far, it sounds that they're desperately hoping to get us to reconcile with everybody because they need us and they know it. And I'm not saying that that's what our goal is, to have them come back and beg because they need us. But it's a very different story. Their efforts in diplomacy is to bring us back to the table and push Zelensky into this agreement. He was just talking about the mineral rights that the UK stands to also participate in, and perhaps parts of Europe as well, because they did contribute.
Which nobody in this House should doubt for a second is sincere. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the events of this weekend and the moving scenes that greeted President Zelensky as he arrived in London on Saturday. Mr. Speaker, I saw for myself he was taken aback when the crowd in Whitehall cheered at the top of their voices, and they were speaking for the whole of our country. A reminder that this government, this House and this nation stand in unwavering support behind him and the people of Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, we resolved together to move forward the strong cause of just and lasting peace in Ukraine. And then on Sunday, I hosted European leaders from across our continent, equally committed to this cause, including President Macron, Prime Minister Maloney, the leaders of NATO, the European Commission and Council, and the Prime Minister of Canada, a vital ally of this country, the Commonwealth and Ukraine, responsible for training over 40,000 Ukrainian troops.
I don't know about y'all, but I think Trudeau was just interested in getting a free trip as he's kind of on his way out. But hey, listen, guys, if you want to call in, share your thoughts on what's going on, you could scan the QR code. I put it in the chat, the link for the live call-in. If you're on mobile, just screenshot it, go to your Photos app, tap the QR code. It'll be an active link for you. But just want to put that up there. It'll be at the bottom of the live stream, though. Boom. There we go. It's back there. Colin, I'm interested in what other people think on this topic.
I also had the privilege beforehand of speaking online to the leaders of Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia, each of whom, as close as they are to the front line with Russia, stressed the urgency of the moment. And, Mr. Speaker, it was a productive summit. Together we agreed a clear strategy that the United Kingdom, France and our allies will work closely with Ukraine on a plan to stop the fighting, which we will then discuss directly with the United States. It's a plan that has 4 clear principles, which I'll now share in full with the House.
I'll be right back, guys. I'm going to keep this playing, but pay attention to how this is breaking down. He is by no means attempting to take over this process and demonstrate UK leadership in the world. This is very subdued. It's very matter of fact, and they're just trying to get a deal done, trying to get Zelensky back in line here, right? It's completely misconstrued by CNN and other mainstream media in the United States, and we could take a look at that a little bit. But I'm going to play this for a little bit. I'll be right back.
First, that we must keep the military aid to Ukraine flowing. Keep increasing the economic pressure on Russia. And to that end, alongside our partnership on air defence, we're doubling down on military aid. Already this year, we've taken our support to record levels. But on Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. Second, Mr. Speaker, we agreed that any lasting peace must guarantee the sovereignty and security of Ukraine, and that Ukraine must be at the table when negotiating their future. That is absolutely vital. Third, we agreed that in the event of a peace deal, we will continue to boost Ukraine's defences and Ukraine's deterrence. And finally, fourth, we agreed to develop a coalition of the willing, ready to defend a deal in Ukraine and guarantee the peace. Mr. Speaker, after all, the Ukrainian position is completely understandable. For them, the war did not begin 3 years ago. That was merely the latest and most brutal escalation. They have signed agreements with Putin before. They've experienced the nature of his diplomacy and the calibre of his word. We cannot accept a weak deal like Minsk again. No, we must proceed with strength, and that does now require urgently a coalition of the willing. Mr. Speaker, we agreed on Sunday that those willing to play a role in this will intensify planning now. And as this House would expect, Britain will play a leading role, with, if necessary, and together with others, boots on the ground and planes in the air. Mr. Speaker, it is right that Europe do the heavy lifting to support peace on our continent. But to succeed, this effort must also...
Did he just say what I think he said? To succeed, Europe must do the heavy lifting. So they're actually taking some ownership here. This is great. This is exactly what Trump wanted them to do.
Have strong US backing. Now, I want to assure this House, I take none of this lightly. I've visited British troops in Estonia, and no aspect of my role weighs more heavily than the deployment of British troops in the service of defence and security in Europe. And yet I do feel very strongly that the future of Ukraine is vital for our national security. Russia is a menace in our waters and skies. They've launched cyber attacks on our NHS, assassination attempts in our streets. In this House, we stand by Ukraine because it's the right thing to do. But we also stand by them because it's in our interest to do so. Because if we do not achieve a lasting peace, then the instability and insecurity that has hit the living standards of working people in Britain, that will only get worse. And Putin's appetite for conflict and chaos. That will only grow. So a strong peace, a just peace, a lasting peace, that has now to be our goal. It is vital, it is in our interests, and its pursuit, Britain will lead from the front for the security of our continent, the security of our country, and the security of the British people. We must now win the peace. And I commend this statement to the House.
I come to the Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Bedrock.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his...
So this is always interesting. They're back and forth. I'm just going to let it go for just a bit because I think there will, in fact, be some back and forth on... I'm not on screen, am I? Hopefully you could hear me. But there may be a little bit of back and forth here with the opposition party. But let's see if they're actually all in alignment, right? But the interesting takeaway, though, so far, everything that's been presented by the Prime Minister of the UK is effectively 100% in line with what Trump has laid out. There's no deviation. I'm still a little bit confused about the statement that was put out there earlier in the day that they're going to promote peace by sending more troops into the Ukraine. That seems like an escalation to me, but I guess we'll find out more as it gets going. But let's see what the opposition here challenges with, if they do.
Statement, and also for our conversation earlier today. The United Kingdom is a free, democratic and sovereign country. We recognise that Ukraine is fighting for her survival and fighting to have the same freedom, democracy and sovereignty which all of us here enjoy. That is why both the opposition and the government are fully committed to supporting Ukraine and President Zelensky. I was also glad to see His Majesty the King welcome President Zelensky at Sandringham. As I said at the weekend, President Zelensky is a hero. He is a symbol of the bravery of the Ukrainian people. There are, of course, many areas where the Prime Minister and I disagree, but now is the time for us to discuss where we do agree. I welcome all of his actions this weekend to convene European leaders, as well as the focus on economic security using UK export finance to support British jobs. As the Prime Minister knows, we welcomed the uplift in defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2027. We also support the use of foreign aid to achieve this. We welcome a commitment to reach 3% in the years ahead, and we will support him in taking difficult spending decisions, including on welfare. And we will return to the details of how the government will fund this in the near future. But for now, it is right...
Wait, we will say that again? They're going to revisit how the government will fund this in the near future, but for now they're going to move forward with it? Hold on. Billions of dollars? Or pounds in their case?
Difficult spending decisions, including on welfare. And we... this.
Wait, hold on.
We welcome a commitment to reach 3% in the years ahead, and we will support him in taking difficult spending decisions, including on welfare. And we will return to the details of how the government will fund this in the near future. But for now, it is right that the Prime Minister is working with allies in Europe and with the United
All right, I'm not up on their politics, but did she just say they're going to cut their own welfare to fund this?
States to bring peace to Ukraine and not
Did you guys hear that?
a surrender to Russia. As part of this, the Prime Minister has suggested that British troops could be deployed in Ukraine. There are obviously a range of possible options for what such a deployment could look like, and we are keen to work with the government, but we will need details of any such plan. This will be a difficult but significant step. I know many in Parliament and across our country will be interested in what this entails, and I ask him to work with us so there can be effective scrutiny. I also welcome the coalition of the willing to support Ukraine and agree that Europe must do the heavy lifting. So can I ask the Prime Minister to update us on what European and other allies are willing to offer towards this coalition? Can I welcome the use of the proceeds from frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine, and ask the Prime Minister if he has plans to go further and use the frozen assets themselves? Can I ask him for an update on the government's sanctions on Russian...
I got to tell you, I've watched their Prime Minister's questions in the past, especially when it was Tony Blair way back in the day. They were intense. They were animated. This is like the most subdued back and forth I've seen in my life. Not that there was back and forth, but just the most subdued, opposition feedback that I've seen in my life.
linked individuals, and for confirmation that such sanctions would not be lifted in the event of a ceasefire. And I ask the Prime Minister to update us on the steps he and other allies are taking to ensure that Ukraine is at the negotiating table for any peace plan, and what he thinks can be done to heal the rift with Washington. As the Prime Minister referenced in his speech, the Minsk agreements of 2015 failed to stop Russian aggression and ultimately did not return Ukraine's territorial integrity. His second principle is that any lasting peace guarantees the sovereignty of Ukraine. So can I finally ask how the Prime Minister will work to ensure we avoid a repeat of the Minsk agreements, and how we can ensure that any peace fully protects Ukrainian sovereignty? At times like these, it is so important that we stand together to defend shared values and the fundamental, basic principle that aggressors should not win. The Prime Minister will have our support to do that.
All right, so I just looked up real quick because they talked about the UK Export Finance Agency. Like, what the heck is this? So here, real quick, okay? UK's Export Credit Agency and Government Department, it provides financial support and insurance to help UK businesses export their goods and services. Okay, sounds normal. It offers a range of products, including, now here's the part that gets me. It offers guarantees, there's three things, guarantees to make financing more attractive to international buyers. Okay, loans, direct lending to overseas buyers to purchase from UK suppliers. Starting to scratch my head. Insurance, policies to protect against risk of non-payment for exports. So wait a minute. They're going to give loans to a country or to somebody overseas to buy stuff from the UK. But once they've given that loan, if they don't actually use it to pay, then they have insurance to protect against that risk of non-payment for the said exports. Well, I don't know. I'm a little confused with this agency.
And to ensure that we continue to uphold those values all of us in this Parliament hold dear.
5 minutes.
Can I thank her for her message in our discussion this morning? And can I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her support for the measures that we are taking. It matters across this House that we are united on this issue. It matters to the Ukrainians and to President Zelensky. And I can tell you that he was moved by the reception that he got in our country on Saturday. And I can tell you I felt very proud to be British on Saturday when our country spoke with one voice, and she reflects that with the unity across the House, and I do thank her.
Okay, they're showing unity across the House. That's why it was very subdued.
For it. She asks about the details of any deployment. We will, of course, put details before the House when we get to that stage, if we get to that stage. And as I mentioned to her this morning in our phone call, I will make sure that she gets whatever briefings she needs to be able to look at the detail before it's put before the House, so she's fully informed. On the question of other allies, we had a long meeting yesterday with a number of allies. My strong view is that we have to move forward, we have to lead from the front, and therefore we need a coalition of the willing, because otherwise we will move at the speed of the most reluctant, and that will be too slow. A number of countries and allies indicated their support. They will set that out in due course. I won't pretend that every country is in the same place on this issue. That is why I and others took the view that we should take a leading position and move forward. But I will give further details as they become available. On the question of the frozen assets themselves, obviously the proceeds, the profits, are being used in the way that the House understands in accordance with the statement I just made. On the assets themselves, it is a very complicated issue, not straightforward, but I do think that we need to do and are doing more work to look at what are the possibilities, at least, along with other countries, but I'm not going to pretend that this is simple or straightforward. On the sanctions, we introduced the heaviest sanctions last week that we've put in place, and she is quite right. They must not be lifted just because there's a cessation in the fighting. They must be kept in place as a vital part of our armoury, something which didn't happen with Minsk, and she's quite right to say that we have to avoid the mistakes of the past, which is why a security guarantee is so important. A guarantee that we should lead, but needs US backing if it's to act as a proper guarantee. And of course she's right.
Again, guys, come on. Like, we should lead, but it requires US backing. Are you really leading if you need that kind of backup, right? Just, restructure it, restate it as it is. Just, we are going to step up to the plate, and we appreciate our partnership with the United States in getting this done. I don't know.
To say Ukraine must be at the table in any discussions about the future of Ukraine, and I think that's a common position across the House.
Okay, so that one was a little bit of a low blow. When you have bilateral discussions going on, right? You take these tactics, right? Too many cooks in the kitchen, not too good. Too many people in one room trying to hash out an agreement may not be the best approach either. Situational leadership there. You meet individually with folks, get a common framework, get everybody agreed to stuff, put things on paper, get it going. Of course, the political drive here is to throw a jab at the president here, saying that he excluded Ukraine in some way, when in reality, y'all probably saw it over the past week because we streamed it. Starmer came to the White House separately. Macron came to the White House separately. Zelensky came to the White House separately. They had phone, discussions, video conference discussions with Russia separately. That was the tactic, to do it in that regard. It was not excluding anybody. But let's see what he closes out with here.
Thank you.
The Foreign Affairs Select Committee, Emily Thornbury. Dame Emily Thornbury.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. We all watched with alarm and distress the scenes from the White House on Friday, but equally were...
Okay. I feel like she's joking. I don't know. Or maybe she's serious. It just sounds so exaggerated, the way she's speaking about we were distressed by the scenes at the White House. I don't know.
Across the country, extremely grateful that we had a Prime Minister who had such a pitch-perfect response at the weekend. And as he works towards a just peace for Ukraine, he has the support of the whole country in doing so. But here is the question. The Prime Minister said on Laura Kuenssberg on Sunday that following the cuts to the aid budget, that he would go through line by line to ensure that the priorities of Ukraine, Sudan and Gaza were all prioritised in a lasting peace. The difficulty is that after refugee costs, admin costs, the department's commitments and things like the World Bank and the UN are taken into account, it's hard to believe that there will be enough left in the budget to provide meaningful humanitarian support in these priority areas. So does the Prime Minister understand the concern of so many that these cuts could in fact, in the long term, hobble the very leadership that the Prime Minister has shown this weekend and that he has finally given the world some hope?
All right, there you go. If you spend enough in the manner in which she's describing, or how the UK has, then you can allow, or the people will allow you to pass, free speech laws that get you in trouble for Facebook posts. Something that the president and J.D. Vance and the vice president here were very critical of, and it came up in discussions with Starmer. All right, so I'm going to leave him there. So that was Starmer, right? He's making the case, but again, as CNN and some of the other ones put out there, this is not Europe leading in the absence of the United States. They're clearly on multiple occasions saying we need the U.S. We're doing this in such a way to help bring us together because we need the U.S. The U.S. has to have our backs on this, right? What does that sound like? Does that sound like they're leading without us? It sounds more like they really need us, and they understand that they have to come to the table. The latest breaking news that we started off with, was that funding has been paused, but Trump also said a few words today. Talked about some investment opportunities. Interesting investment opportunities. Taiwan Semiconductor is noted here. Again, that's a big, big challenge. Are they going to move their facilities here? Very likely with some of the investment levels that they're talking about. But let's get Trump's discussion points here. See how he references everything that's kind of going on or does not. They'll pepper him with a bunch of questions, right?
from the
I don't know who this Bernie Dave is. I don't know who Angelique is either. Let's see who. Oh. All right. The ad is done. All right, let's let Trump back in.
Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is a very big day for a lot of reasons, but this gentleman is a very unique man. It's, I think I could say in the world of chips, certainly, but in the world pretty much of business, nobody's done what he's done. Very, for those of you that are into that world, you would say, wow, he's a legend, but he is a legend, and it's an honor to be with you. Very great honor. Thank you very much. Mr. President. Thank you very much. Welcoming from TSMC, which is the biggest there is at a level that you can't even calculate, frankly. CC Wei to the White House for a very historic announcement. This is a tremendous thing for our country and hopefully for his company. We're also pleased to be joined by Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and White House AI and SIP, the crypto czar David Sachs, another two very highly respected people. It's great to have you guys involved. And David, thank you very much for coming on. David is sort of the king of intellect in that world. We have some good people. Today, Taiwan Semiconductor is announcing that they will be investing at least $100 billion in new capital in the United States over the next short period of time to build state-of-the-art semiconductor manufacturing facilities. I think mostly it's going to be in Arizona, which is what I understand, which is a great state. I like it because I won it, but I won most of them, actually. But I did. We won it, and we won it big. The most powerful AI chips in the world will be made right here in America. And it'll be a big percentage of the chips made by his company. But as you know, they're based mostly in Taiwan. And they're far and away the biggest. There's nobody even close. This $100 billion in new investment will go into building 5 cutting-edge fabrication facilities in the great state that we just discussed, Arizona, and will create thousands of jobs, many thousands of jobs, and high-paying jobs. In total, today's announcement brings Taiwan Semiconductor investments to about $165 billion they've started already.
165 billion of committed investments in the United States by TSCM. So rather than print money and just dish it out there, right, and think that's going to make a difference, why not incentivize, create the framework and the system that favors massive levels of investment to flow back into the United States? $165 billion of investment. A lot of that probably going to Texas. Hooray for me. But that is going to be unreal. This is one company, but you start the multiplier effect from there. What does that mean for us long term? It means, good things, economic prosperity, growth, so forth. What changed, right? The only thing that really changes, we're not relying on the printing press. We're relying on fixing the system and making that work better. Part of it too, the trade imbalances that existed, the labor arbitrage that exists, addressing those issues. Now they're looking at it from a manufacturing angle, but from an intellectual capital standpoint, I think that's the next big thing that we got to take a look at. Yoda, hey, what's going on, Yoda? Again, appreciate you joining, and I appreciate everyone that's a previous joiner. I get a lot of repeat viewers. It's been telling me recently about 30%, so I appreciate that, guys. That's great. That's much higher than the national average. I don't know what the national average is, but anyway. If we start making our own chips, would that lead us to care less about Taiwan? Pretty much, as a country, Taiwan Semiconductor may become U.S. Semiconductor. I don't know, but that's the idea. I mean, they have a lot of manufacturing capability. They're a manufacturer, more or less, right? They do a lot of middle grade chips and production that goes into a lot of different applications. The high end stuff is what NVIDIA designs. I don't know if TSCM, who they kind of build stuff for, but They're more the mass producer, and they've got all the technology to, kind of bring those things, here into the United States, and we can pump out chips left and right on our own. In fact, that's interesting. I have to look, how automated are their facilities in Taiwan? I'd imagine it's pretty good. But if they're to build them here, would they take it a few steps further? Can you have an autonomous manufacturing plant for chips? I don't know.
Among the largest new foreign direct investments in the United States, Apple, as you know, made a big announcement last week of $500 billion, and we have some others that have announced. We have many that want to announce, but I don't have time to do all of these announcements, I tell you. But for you, I'm doing the announcement.
Thank you.
This will create hundreds of billions of dollars in economic activity and boost America's dominance in artificial intelligence and beyond.
Oops. Sorry, guys. Keep it going.
Semiconductors are the backbone of the 21st century economy, and really, without the semiconductors, there is no economy. Powering everything from AI to automobiles to advanced manufacturing, and we must be able to build the chips and semiconductors that we need right here in American factories with American skill and American labor, and that's exactly what we're doing. As you know, Taiwan pretty much has a monopoly on that market, and I think pretty much is not a term that's even appropriate. They do have a monopoly, and this is a tremendous move by the most powerful company in the world. It's a matter of economic security. It's also a matter of national security for us. And at the same time, Mr. Wei will be able to diversify and have his...
It may not take decades any longer. That things have changed. The level of progress or getting some of these things put into production has been accelerated quite a bit. So if you have as he was describing, he said the most powerful company in the world. He's talking about from a semiconductor manufacturing standpoint. If they are to take all of their intellectual property, put massive investment in the United States, they could probably crank something out in like a couple of years, wherever they decide to land it. Have to look into that a little bit more, but they could probably crank something out in a couple of years. And at that point, we're good. It's still Trump's 4-year term, and we're pumping out our chips here in the United States. The company is Taiwan Semiconductor, but they'll operate in the United States, governed by our laws, protected by our, intellectual property laws and so forth. That you don't have any concerns about stuff sneaking on those chips. Hopefully, all the way around, I don't think you can lose with that. And so, creating that system to make this type of a move a smart business decision is part of the mix. What was lacking beforehand, to where they were trying to bribe people with the CHIPS Act, like, oh, why don't you all come over here and we'll give you a couple billion to do this. You go from that scenario to all of a sudden now they're going to invest $150 billion in the U.S.
A tremendous presence in another place, and a very safe place. And I want to thank Taiwan Semiconductor for doing the announcement. And I'd like to ask Mr. Wei to say a few words, if you might. And I'd also like to ask Howard and David, you can say a couple of words, but maybe you should go first, because
the manufacturing in Arizona. And now, maybe in Arizona. And now, let me proudly say, now the vision become reality. In Phoenix, Arizona, with 3,000 employees, we are producing the most advanced chip made on U.S. soil. With the success of our first fab, so we are now very happy to announce we are going to invest additional $100 billion US in addition to our current $65 billion US investment in Arizona. We are going to build 3 more new fabs after we promised 3 fabs already, and another 2 very advanced packaging fab, and most important, R&D center also in Arizona. For this, all the investment, 165 billion.
So I just looked it up. The plant in Arizona should be complete by 2027. That's 2 years out. They're breaking ground. They're getting it going now, right?
It's going to create thousands of the high-paid jobs, as the president just announced. And we are, most important, actually, we are going to produce many AI chips. We are going to produce many chips to support the AI progress and to support the smartphones progress. And again, with that, I want to thank President Trump again for his support. In addition, I also want to thank my customers in the U.S., such as Apple, NVIDIA, AMD, Qualcomm, Broadcom. They all support TSMC's manufacturing in the U.S. Without their support, we probably cannot make it through. So, again, I want to thank them. Also, I'd like to thank the TSMC's employee. Without their effort, we just cannot make it today. That's all I want to say, and thank you.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you very much. Howard, please, David.
Sure.
Thank you.
So I'm thrilled to be here today because President Trump has made it a fundamental objective to bring semiconductor chip manufacturing home to America. Under the Biden administration, TSMC received a $6 billion grant, and that encouraged them to build $65 billion. So America gave TSMC 10% of the money to build here. And now you're seeing the power of Donald Trump's presidency, because TSMC, the greatest manufacturer of chips in the world, is coming to America with a $100 billion investment. And of course, that is backed by the fact that they can come here because they can avoid paying tariffs. So the idea is come to America, build greatness in America, build for the American customers, the Apple, NVIDIA, that whole list that Chairman Wei gave in order to bring production to America. So we're really, really excited. This continues the most incredible path you've ever seen in these first weeks and months of the Trump administration of incredible manufacturing coming to America. The keys that the president has called out are coming here. They're coming here in huge size because they want to be in the greatest market in the world. And
Check out Ground News, guys. Gets you a view into the bias for all the different stories being put out there. Gets you a full, full set of talking points. What the right saying, what the left saying. I use the Vantage plan. I got it 40% off. Link is in the description as well, but just putting the QR code up there for a sec. Take a screenshot, guys.
they want to avoid the tariffs that if they're not here, they'd have to suffer. So I want to congratulate CC Wei for bringing in this incredible $100 billion investment, but it's on the shoulders of our President Donald Trump, which is why he's coming. So thank you.
Thank you. David?
Thank you, sir. Well, the products that TSMC makes are literally the most important products in the world. I mean, these advanced chips power everything. They power AI, they power your phone, they power your cars, and without them, the whole modern economy would stop, but they're not made in the United States. So for TSMC to move here is a huge, huge development, and we owe that to President Trump's leadership on the economy and Secretary Lutnick as well. And CC, thank you for coming here. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, David. So thank you very much. A big percentage of chips with this investment will be made now, a big percentage. Worldwide, we had very little, almost none. We used to have a lot with Intel, but we had very little. And we'll be at close to 40% of the market with this transaction and a couple of others that we're doing. That's a tremendous leap, like a leap that nobody would have really said was possible. So I just want to thank you all for being here. If you want a couple of questions, ideally on this subject, yes. You're probably talking about 25,000 jobs, but it'll get bigger and bigger with time. Knowing this gentleman, it'll get bigger and bigger. There'll be no stopping them. Yeah, Brian, go ahead.
In addition to the job, you talked about national security, and that's one thing I think a lot of Americans don't understand. Explain the national security aspect of this.
Well, without the chips and semiconductors, nothing runs today. You can't buy a car without them. You can't get a radio, a television. You can't get anything. And we thought it was very important, obviously business-wise, but we thought even in terms of national security to have this large percentage of the chips, semiconductors, and other things that they make the most important product. And not a product that you can really copy. It takes years and years. You know, on the needle of a pin is total genius. I mean, they can put things, I mean, something the size of the needle, the point of a pin, they put information that is just not even believable. So if you would see this, it's just really something. Yes, Brian?
One aspect of that, Honda announced they're coming to Indiana because of the tariffs. Once again,
that's right.
Bringing additional jobs and manufacturing. Don't comment on that as well.
Well, Honda's coming, and I told you about Apple that they're going to be starting to build massively here, $500 billion. And we have many other companies going to be announced, but we had many that have already announced.
Yeah, clarification. Where'd it go? I lost the chat. Yeah, this is earlier today. This one, Tony. This is earlier today that Trump gave this talk, as well as the Prime Minister's comments on Ukraine. A lot of this stuff is going to flow into tomorrow's State of the Union address. It's more of a address of the, I don't know, both houses of Congress. It's not exactly State of the Union, but I'm just going to call it that, I guess. I'll be picking that up a couple of hours after it goes through. So we'll run through it, kind of do some highlights of different parts on it. But nevertheless, yeah. So this was today, though.
And no, it's going to be great. It's looking really strong. I don't think this country has ever seen anything like we're seeing right now. Now, the tariffs, as you know, will start a week earlier than the reciprocal, which is going to be on a couple of weeks earlier. Reciprocal tariffs start on April 2nd. And I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to go April Fool's Day, because that costs a lot of money, but that one day. But so we're going April 2nd. But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. In other words, you build, and this is exactly what Mr. Wei is doing, by building here. Otherwise, they'll build, if they did them in Taiwan to send them here, they'll have 25% or 30% or 50% or whatever the number may be someday. It'll go only up. But by doing it here, he has no tariff, so he's way ahead of the game. And I would just say this to people in Canada or Mexico: if they're going to build car plants, the people that are doing them are much better off building here, because we have the market. We're the market where they sell the most. And so I think it's going to be very exciting for the automobile companies, very exciting for, I can think of any, as an example, North Carolina, they had the great, I used to go there to buy furniture for hotels, and it's been wiped out. That business all went to other countries. And now it's all going to come back into North Carolina, the furniture manufacturing business, please.
Is the Ukraine minerals deal now dead, or can it be revived?
Well, I'll let you know. We're making a speech. You probably heard about it tomorrow night, so I'll let you know tomorrow night. But no, I don't think so. I think it's a great deal for us because, you know, Biden very, very foolishly, stupidly, frankly, gave $300 billion and $350 billion more accurately to a country to fight and to try and do things. And you know what happened? We get nothing. Just gave it. We could have rebuilt our entire U.S. Navy with $350 billion. Think of it, $350 billion. We could have rebuilt our U.S. Navy. So he gave it away as fast as the money could be gone. And what we're doing is getting that all back, and a lot more than that. And what we need, it's very important for this business that we're talking about here with chips and semiconductors and everything else. We need rare earths. And the deal we have is we have the finest rare earths that you can.
What do you need to see from President Zelensky to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border. This country really was like the fence on the border. It was very important to Europe, and I'm not knocking Europe. I'm saying that they were a lot smarter than Joe Biden because Joe Biden didn't have a clue. He just gave money hand over fist. And they should have been able to equalize with us. In other words, if we gave $1, they should have given. Well, we gave $350 billion. They probably gave $100. But on top of it all, they get their money back because they're doing it in the form of a loan, and it's a secured loan. So when I saw that, which I've known about for a little while, I said it's time for us to be smart. At the same time, it's great for them because they get us in the country taking the rare earth, which is going to fuel this big engine, and especially the engine that we've in a very short time created. And we get something, and we're there. We have a presence there. With all of that being said, I want one thing to happen. I want all of those young people to stop being killed. They're being killed by the thousands every single week. Last week, 2,700 were killed. 2,700 young, in this case, just about all young boys. From Ukraine and from Russia.
I just want to call attention to Adeline's comment here. You're in a cult. Trump cares nothing about you. I'm sorry you feel that way. He cares about you too.
And that's not young people from the United States, but it's on a human basis. I want to see it stop. The money is one thing, but the death. And they're losing thousands of soldiers a week. And that's not including the people that get killed every time a town goes down or a missile goes into a town. And I want to see it stop. Yes.
Are you considering canceling military aid to Ukraine? And can we get a reaction to what the Prime Minister said, that your administration is bringing U.S. worldview in alignment with Moscow's?
So this is a deal that should have never happened. This is a deal that would have never happened. And it didn't happen for 4 years. It didn't happen. It was never even close to happening. If I were president, it would not have happened. And October 7th would not have happened in Israel. And inflation wouldn't have happened. And Afghanistan, disastrous, the way they withdrew. Not the fact that they withdrew, but the way they withdrew would have never happened. And we would have had Bagram right now instead of China having it. It was 1 hour away from where China makes their nuclear weapons. We would have kept Bagram, with one of the biggest air bases in the world. All of these things happened, and it's a shame. But it is what it is, and now we're here. I want to see it end fast. I don't want to see this go on for years and years. Now, President Zelensky supposedly made a statement today in AP. I'm not a big fan of AP, so maybe it was an incorrect statement, but he said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time. And he better not be right about that. That's all I'm saying.
This project, could this minimize the impact of the U.S. with chips should China decide to isolate Taiwan or China decide to take Taiwan?
Well, it's a very interesting point. It's a great question, actually. But this would certainly, I can't say minimize. That would be a catastrophic event, obviously. But it will at least give us a position where we have, in this very, very important business, we would have a very big part of it in the United States. So it would have a big impact if something should happen with Taiwan.
Russian sanctions, are you looking at relieving Russian sanctions if there is a peace deal?
Well, we're going to make deals with everybody to get this war, including Europe and European nations. And they've acted very well. You know, they're good people. I know most of them are friends of mine. The heads of state, the heads of the various countries, prime ministers from the different. I got four prime ministers and 5 presidents called me over the last 2 days, and they want to work it out. They want to get it worked out. And I think they're also, you know, they're talking money, but the money is less important than the deaths. We're talking thousands of young people a week. And people would say, why do I care about Ukraine? Young people, why do I care about, and not all young, but they're pretty young. You know, Ukraine is running a little bit low, and they're getting older. They're recruiting older people. It's a very, very sad thing that's happening over there, and we want to get it finished. We want to stop the death.
On the tariffs, is there any room left for Canada and Mexico to make a deal before midnight? And should we expect those Chinese tariffs, the extra 10%, to take
No room left for Mexico or for Canada. No, the tariffs, they're all set. They go into effect tomorrow.
Mr. President, just to follow up on my colleague's question.
And just so you understand, vast amounts of fentanyl have poured into our country from Mexico, and as you know, also from China, where it goes to Mexico and goes to Canada. And China also had an additional 10, so it's 10 plus 10. And it comes in from Canada and it comes in from Mexico, and that's a very important thing to say. Yeah, please, go ahead.
Have you decided if you're going to suspend military aid to Ukraine? Have you made that decision?
Well, I haven't even talked about that right now. I mean, right now, we'll see what happens. A lot of things are happening right now as we speak. I mean, literally as we speak. I could give you an answer and go back to my office, the beautiful Oval Office. I could go back into the Oval Office and find out that the answer is obsolete. It's like his business. It's obsolete. You come up with a new chip and it's obsolete about 2 minutes later, right? But that's what's good about his business. That's why he's the only one that's successful in it. But
to follow up on my colleague's question, from Russia saying that your foreign policy is largely in line with their vision, should that be concerning to Americans?
said what?
Should that be concerning to Americans?
Read the statement.
That Russia says that your administration's foreign policy is, quote, largely in line with their vision.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it takes two to tango, and you're going to have to make a deal with Russia, and you're going to have to make a deal with Ukraine. You're going to have the assent, and you're going to have the consent from the European nations, because I think that's important, and from us. I think everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It can be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal.
Who could he be talking about, guys?
I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else. We talk about suffering. They've suffered. But if you think about it, under President Bush, they got Georgia, right? Russia got Georgia. Under President Obama, they got a nice big submarine base, a nice big chunk of land where they have their submarines. You know that, right? Crimea. Under President Trump, they got nothing. And under President Biden, they tried to get the whole thing. They tried to get the whole big Ukraine, the whole thing. If I didn't get in here, they would have gotten the whole thing. So I can only say you can go back to Bush, you can go back to Obama, and go back to Biden. They took a lot. The only one they didn't get, you know what I gave them? I gave them anti-tank missiles. That's what I gave them. I gave them sanctions on Russia. I gave them javelins. You know the javelins? You know when they took out all those tanks? You know the tanks were heading to Kiev by the hundreds, and they were unstoppable. And I gave them javelins. So, you know, I really, Putin is the one that will tell you this has not been so good for them. The fact is that I just want fairness. I want fairness. But think of it. I gave Russia nothing except grief. I gave them nothing. I gave them sanctions and javelins. That's what I gave them. Obama gave them sheets, and you heard that statement before. It's a very famous. Trump gave them javelins, and Obama gave them sheets, and then they say how close I am to Russia. And let me tell you, we have to make a deal because there are a lot of people being killed that shouldn't be killed. But remember, Trump gave them nothing, and the other presidents gave them a lot. They gave them everything.
Trade, you met with Argentine President Javier Milei at CPAC. He wants to sign a free trade agreement with the United States. Is that something that you would consider even with Argentina?
I'll consider anything. And Argentina, I think he's great, by the way. I think he's a great leader. He's doing a great job. He's doing a fantastic job. Brought it back from oblivion. Yeah, we'll look at things. We're looking at the UK with things. It doesn't have to be tariffs, but tariffs are easy. They're fast. They're efficient. And they bring fairness. For instance, when people kill their their dollar, their equivalent of the dollar, whether it's the yuan or the yen in Japan or the yuan in China, when they drop them down, that puts us at a very unfair disadvantage. So all I have to do is say, Howard, we're going to have to raise the tariffs a little bit, because I've called President Xi, I've called the leaders of Japan to say you can't continue to reduce and break down your currency. You can't do it because it's unfair to us. It's very hard for us to make tractors, Caterpillar, here when Japan, China, and other places are killing their currency, meaning driving it down. So all of these things add up. And the way you solve it very easily is with tariffs, because when they do that, instead of having to make phone calls every day like I used to do with certain leaders, President Xi a little bit, a lot of phone calls, talking about the fact that they're lowering their yuan, they're lowering it down, and that makes it very, very hard for us. So this way I just say, look, let them do that, and we make up for it with the tariffs. But
Will you be speaking with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum about
yeah, sure, I will. I have a lot of respect for her.
Mr. President, tariff takes effect. It'll be 20% on China now. How high are you willing to go against China?
Well, I can't say. It depends on what they do with their currency. It depends on what they do in terms of a retaliation with some kind of an economic retaliation, which I don't think they're going to retaliate too much. Hey, look, the United States has been taken advantage of for 40 years. The United States...
Yeah, that 40 years is important. I was actually going to say the same thing, that this has been going on for decades. And whether it's the intellectual property theft, access to free and open markets to our companies, wanting to sell into the Chinese market, you go down the list, right? The tariffs that they implement on our goods has not been free and open for a very long time.
Has been a laughingstock for years and years. That's why this gentleman is built in Taiwan instead of building here. It would have been better if he built here. If we had a president that knew what they were doing, and we had a lot of them very bad on trade. Look, I'm a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but he was bad on trade, very bad on trade. He allowed a lot of people, a lot of businesses to be taken. So I say that with due respect, because he was so great on other things, but he was bad on trade. We are setting records right now, records like nobody has ever seen before. When you have companies like this coming in, and almost 40% of their company in one signature is going to be devoted to what he does, which is one of the most important.
Now that's an important stat. 40%. This investment will drive 40% of their global operations into the United States.
Businesses in the world. That's an unbelievable thing. When Apple now is going to start building all of their plants here, all because of what we've done in terms of, it's not because he likes me or they like me. They don't probably like me at all. I don't know. I think he likes me a little bit at least. But you know what? It's the incentive we created, or the negative incentive. I mean, it's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs. It's a very powerful weapon that politicians haven't used because they were either dishonest, stupid, or paid off in some other form. And now we're using them. Say it.
Have you spoken with President Xi about this?
I don't want to tell you that. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Running for New York City mayor.
Will people who don't respond to the emails be fired?
All right, so a lot of it economic focused, not so much on the Zelensky side. Was not his focus of what he's talking about. And interestingly enough, I've been saying this for quite some time. For folks that have been on my prior live streams, I'm sure have heard me talk about this. I think the economy is in an extremely fragile state. We need to be very aware of this. And I've been saying it's in this state since before the election, that a lot of the numbers, you keep seeing revisions month after month happening. And that jobs report that came in the week before the election was not good. It was pretty brutal. And I think that that shocked a lot of people in terms of how bad things were, headed. Now we're in a scenario, right? And I've got a few data points here. And all these data points came in mid-February to the end of February of this year. I need to be clear. I'm not trying to fake news you guys with old data. We'll start at the top. Consumer confidence, a survey of how people are feeling about the economy and their spending habits. Right, it fell by 0.2%, which is the most in 4 years. How is that? Within 60 days, this happens. There's some underlying currents that are catching up with things. Consumer confidence also dropped sharply in February. The confidence index falling by however many points. Okay, manufacturing. Manufacturing sector is experiencing contraction within the United States. PMI remaining below 50. The challenges include inflation, rising material costs, and workforce issues. Workforce issues, that's an interesting one, right? GDP growth, right? That one is looking like it's trending down for the fourth quarter. Not too good. They've already put forecasts out there that it may be negative for the first quarter of this year. Inflation sticky, global economic uncertainty coming up. All these things are leading towards some corrective action in the market. And it's been kicked, can's been kicked down the road by Biden. And we're unfortunately in the current state of affairs now where we have to deal with them head on. I'm more confident with Trump and his team taking action than Biden or Harris, as it was, having to deal with it. But it needs to be acknowledged, though, that these are inherited issues. These are things that the trajectories were not very visible to people. And it's going to be difficult to go out there and start taking action, putting things in place to make the system work for everyone long term, versus just this short term thinking where let me pay off somebody's student loan, let me keep throwing money out there so I can buy votes, versus let me create a system that allows people to actually pursue the American dream, work hard, and create the type of life that is supposed to be represented by that American dream. Adeline, I missed that 100% false comment. I'm losing track of the chat. I apologize. Anyway, anybody want to call in real quick? One last round before we close this out. And again, tomorrow, I'll put an agenda or a schedule out there, probably around 10 p.m. Central. We'll go live tomorrow night to debrief on the State of the Union address. Going once, going twice. All right, guys. I appreciate you very much. Time for the theme song to close it out. Take care. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
In the shadow she lurks, a digital sage. Her words cut through like a sharpened blade. Political cow, her voice brings rage. A rebel in the neon-born parade. With a keyboard she wields her might, piercing lies with truth's own light. Drifting through the endless night, exposing wrongs to make them right. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a world where falsehoods grow, her wisdom like the wind it blows through every corner, every show. A beacon where the lost clouds glow. Political cow calling out deceit through the screens where fake news meet. She saves us from the twisted tale. Her knowledge fights where logic fails. In a cycle where truth gets blurred, her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading circle where truth gets blurred. Her voice is the sword we've heard, cutting ties with every absurd, leading flocks with every word.